What's up, motherfucker?
Hey everyone, how's it going? This is something that I've been thinking about for the past month or so, weighing on me like a splash of cold water in the morning, reminding me that cold water at the worst possible moment is also the best wake-up call on some occasions. Ever since I was a kid, gaming has been an anchor that I've relied on, but it's also been a coping mechanism at different stages in my life. Nowadays, it's still a part of my life, but for different reasons, and has more of a purpose that gives me different avenues of fulfillment, turning something that I'm passionate about into productive pursuits where I can develop skills I can use towards it. Like with books, I would absorb the experiences of various games, good or bad. However, on this channel, I only really ever talked about the good. I approached the covering and the reviewing of games that were in the positive spectrum, games that I really liked and thought were worth talking about. This was a mistake though, because I realized down the track that there were significant flaws and spheres of influence that I wasn't taking notice of whatsoever whenever I would approach a game that I'd want to talk about or not talk about after not enjoying it. There were games that I had planned on covering. I would record as much footage as possible, but what would end up happening with some subjects that I wanted to cover is that I would realize that I wasn't having fun with them anymore. Then I would delete it, uninstall it, remove all of the footage, and then just move on to the next thing. The majority of my channel's videos have consisted of covering things that I generally liked, and it's not like you want to cover things that you don't like necessarily. Plenty of content creators and reviewers do it, not always because they like it, but because it's good for content, and plus it opens up the pool of content that they have to cover to a near infinite degree, in contrast to just only talking about things that you ever liked. My logic towards this approach before though was that there are just as many good games as there are bad games, so personally I never felt inclined to talk about the stuff that I didn't like or hated because I felt like it was a waste of time. But as someone that has been slowly studying game development over the years, I realize as well that by doing this I also ignore the potential value of what other games can yield, even if they have mixed or negative reception, which comes to my next flaw, and that was the allowance of other people's opinions affecting my overall decision on whether to look at a game or not. I would filter game lists for the highest rated games because I only ever wanted the best or what was considered the best. The 90 to 100% threshold for ratings felt like a safe gamble. What could possibly go wrong with the choice of games available in that category? Well, as it turns out, surprising and unfortunate disappointments. I was disappointed with Signalis. I was disappointed with Nightmare Reaper, Dread Templar, and other titles that had good ratings. I gave them a chance because of the words of other people and what was said about those games. The expectations for a game can develop a lot more further when you read more into the game, especially through other people's reviews or opinions. And for me, I read too much about those games because when you're looking for something that's good, or you type in, for example, the best horror games or something like Signalis, of course you're going to take into account that some of these games are highly regarded and you're going to be going in with those expectations. But the truth is that no game is ever going to match the rabbit hole of expectations that people can create in a product, especially when there's a lot of hype surrounding it. However, that's not to say that you can't get excited for anything. I mean, expectations are a symptom of excitement. I'm pumped for Doom the Dark Ages and GTA 6, and at some point I am going to have a look at Stalker 2 myself, but I will go into those games blindly and with as little information as possible, because after covering games like Signalis, I began to do some thinking about the kind of games that I want to cover as well as the things that I want to talk about in general. And the truth is that for me to grow, I need to see both sides of the spectrum when it comes to things like gaming or other forms of media that I'm into, the good and the bad basically, which is why I had been developing my own mentality and approach to a subject or a game of interest. Now, all I do is this. I look at trailers or at an announcement, skim through the game's pitch or whatever it is that I'm looking at, and that's just it. It's just a very simple and basic approach that limits the expectations significantly. If the subject is available to have a look at and try out, then I will try it out in a demo format or if it's released. If not, then I will wait. In between the waiting period and the release, I don't really look any further into the piece anymore. This is in an effort to stop expectations from developing into something that it will never be. And this also helps negate the negative factor that's been swimming around gaming as of late. We've gotten quite a few punching bags that have been sent to the slab thanks to the sea of creators and commenters looking at the next game to bash. Whether it's Forspoken, Dragon Age Veilguard, Dustborn, Star Wars Outlaws, just to name a few examples, there's enough honey in the pot for people to look at it and say, yeah, this game sucks, and then the rest of the lynch mob arrives to wait for their turn. I've been a part of that cycle before, and I can understand how one wants to avoid a shitty game, but the truth is, you'll never really know for sure until you actually try the thing yourself. Dragon Age Veilguard. I haven't played it yet, and I have seen some footage. I know what's been said about it, and I know what people have thought about it. But guess what? At some point, I will have a go of it, because the curious side of me will delve into it and see if it's really that bad, and even if it is, I can still extract some value from the perspective of an aspiring game developer. When you're consuming a product, there's different flavors of value that can be extracted from a game. For example, Minecraft is a game with many psychological benefits. It provides agency, freedom, control, exploration, creativity, space for social networking, and player-driven storytelling in an incredibly modifiable and dynamic framework. So even if you're one of those people that hated Minecraft or just don't like the game, it doesn't take away the value that's seen by other people. Every game that's perceived as bad or mediocre by the cultural sphere of gaming will gloss over any potential value if the game is just seen as awful or disappointing by the masses. Dragon Age Veilguard is just one example of many, an example of the song and dance that gamers on the internet have been doing for the past few years and more. But no matter how much you bash a game, how much time you dedicate to dissecting and ripping apart something, you can never take out the game's value because of varying perspectives that may identify the values that a game has. The game itself will undoubtedly have some fans, some people that actually enjoy games like Veilguard. Shocking, I know. Get used to it. I'm open to the idea that I may possibly enjoy the game even in spite of what's been said, but I absolutely will not know for certain until I try the game out myself. This attitude has now crossed over to every single piece of media or content that comes across my time in the day, and as a result, it's opened up my views towards gaming and other things even more than before. If you want to be a game developer, you need to identify the potential value in any game you come across. For someone like me who's aspiring to be one, I now approach something not only blindly but analytically as I continue to explore the product. Also, when I want to try something new, I assess my current state of mind and my mood, and just start browsing around. I don't care about the ratings necessarily, but just simple browsing to see what's available. Sometimes I'll even get a bit artsy and create a mood board that reflects my current state of mind and look for games that match the tone of that mood board. Here's an example of what I'm talking about. Say I'm in the market for a bullet hell game with a dark and depressing tone and not much colour, maybe even black and white. I then go on the hunt and look for what's available. If something clicks, great. Already I have a game I'm interested in. But if there isn't, then I expand the search with other genres or, maybe I'll just make it myself. The point is, I don't really look for games based on their ratings anymore. They mean absolutely nothing to me. Instead, I look at something that's reflective of my interest and my current state of mind. With this approach, I can look at something with minimal information of what it's about. If the interest peaks, then I go for it like a shark smelling blood in the ocean. If not, whatever, there's always more stuff out in the sea. Ratings and reviews do have their place in the gaming cosmos, and I'm not going to tell you to ignore them as well. That's really up to you. After all, I would rather that you make your own choice in this decision. So when I talk about value in a game, it could be a number of different things associated with it. It could be the subject matter, the narrative, the emotional connections, the enjoyment of the gameplay or the music, or it could even just be that it's fun. Minecraft is a game that I shrugged off for a very long time, but ultimately came to respect and love it because of the unique feeling that spawned from giving it a chance, which was the feeling of therapy. People can also create values in a game that didn't have those values in the first place. Doom, for instance, is a game that can be fast, intense, chaotic, and challenging, but now I also find the game therapeutic, which is a value that I've placed in it because of what it gives me. The only other games that have ever given me that unique feeling were Minecraft, Skyrim, and I forgot to mention Terraria. There are probably more examples swimming in the back of my mind, but those 4 games are the most immediate examples that come to mind whenever I think of therapeutic games. I don't expect every game to give me this feeling. In fact, I don't really expect anything from a game now. Doom: The Dark Ages, Grand Theft Auto 6 are games that I'm excited for. I know they're on their way, and that's all I really need to know at this point. Another thing to add as well is that as I've gotten older, I've been caring a lot less about things that don't really matter. If I don't end up liking a game, then it doesn't really matter. I just take whatever I can extract from it and then move on with my life. My wants will vary depending on the game, but the most important want that I have for a game is if it's fun. Whether it's a simple arcade space shooter or something overly complex like a Zachtronics game or Cataclysm Dark Days Ahead, I will try it out and see for myself if it interests me, and if something clicks, I just keep going with it. Scrolling on the web to find as much info as possible on a game only ended up diluting the overall experience for me. This was especially the case with the From Software games, where before I would even play it, I would watch countless gameplay clips, spoiling the experience when I really should have just gone in blindly. That was my biggest regret with those games, not allowing any room for mystery and just to, go into the game and find out for myself. So, I've made those mistakes before, and it's inevitable that some info will leak anyways, even if I make a conscious decision to avoid everything associated with the game. So, here's my advice to secure some curiosity for something of interest. Don't act like a vampire seeing the sun every time you see something related to a game of interest. Just acknowledge that it's there and move on. It's not the end of the world. If you want to look into it anyways, well, that's up to you. Just be wary of the insanely powerful effect that comments and videos can have in developing one's own opinion. Even with me, no matter what I cover or talk about, I urge you to try it out and see for yourself. Like with the Slaughter FPS homebrew game on the NES that I covered recently, I did not enjoy that game at all. In fact, I hated it. But I found it interesting enough for the technical aspects and have linked it anyways in that video. It's fine to read up on stuff, it's fine to read what people are talking about, but not at the expense of your own thoughts and beliefs. You should absolutely try to preserve as much curiosity as possible with something of interest. Going in with less usually leads to a much better time because you are curating your own expectations rather than having it being influenced by other people's expectations and thoughts and opinions on the game. There is an old saying, one man's trash is another man's treasure. This is certainly the case in gaming, and in those low or mixed ratings, there might actually be some treasure for someone out there. So what about the really broken games like say Big Rigs Over the Road Racing or Big Rigs Over the Road Racing? Haven't played them, and even if I did, I'd still put a link for them if I ever covered them because I would want people to try and see for themselves, curate their own thoughts and opinions, regardless of what I think. So in effect, I've relied less on having an authoritative statement on a subject like most content creators do, and instead have gone towards channeling introspective thoughts into video format, telling you what's on my mind. So instead of just reviewing something, I just talk about it, and that will be the future of my channel moving forward. For me, it really did turn out that the less I knew, the better. The thought bubbles from other people only come into the equation once I've explored the game myself and have come to my own decision about it. When it comes to things like tools or other utility-based software, it's a different story. For games, those ratings or reviews don't matter to me at all. But for other things in life, it matters a lot more because of what it provides for me, especially when it comes to tools or utility-based hardware or software. Games are meant to be played and enjoyed, a source of leisure or entertainment. I picked Blender for 3D modeling because I wanted to improve my 3D modeling skills. It was something I wanted to get good at, and I read that it was the best starting point for someone wanting to get into 3D modeling, and the options for other software would come around later when I can justify the upgrade. I picked Krita for digital drawing and animations because I read that it was the best free digital drawing software for that sort of thing. I knew that there were better options, but I wanted to try out the free stuff first before investing any further. With games though, it's just a form of entertainment at the end of the day with unique properties that yield different flavors of value, even if it's good or bad. All in all, I'm much happier with gaming now, even though it's become increasingly negative on the internet, and people don't seem to be happy with a lot of things. I myself grew up in the 2000s, and while the sense of wonder and discovery in the games that released every year back then was amazing, it still wasn't as perfect as we would like it to be. That sense of wonder and discovery can still come back even with all of the availability of information, but it starts with you and identifying your relationship with gaming, what you get out of it and why you do it in the first place. My approach to gaming nowadays won't work for everybody, and it's not a one-size-fits-all method. But it's been working for me, and it's given me a deeper perspective than I ever had on gaming when all I was doing was talking about the stuff that I liked instead of looking at every corner of the spectrum. And that's all I really have to say about that. If you've made it to the end, I'd like to thank you for listening and hope that you've gotten some insight from my own personal perspective of the matter. With this day and age in gaming, it's honestly never been better than before. We have more options than we could ever dream of. Game development is more accessible than it's ever been. In fact, with a whole bunch of tools that you can get for free, you can make your own game for free without spending a dime. There's also an infinite pool of unique and interesting projects in the AA and indie space, and we still get some success stories every year. So when people say that gaming has gone to shit or that it's dying, I don't know what you're talking about, because across the board, across every facet of gaming, I'm seeing the exact opposite, and we could not be in a better time than now. So in short, whenever a new game comes out, just see it for what it is. Don't turn it into something that it's not with your own expectations, because you absolutely will never know for sure until you've tried the game out. Thanks for watching.